Welcome to English Storytime Adventures. In today's video, we're going to listen to an exciting short story that will help you improve your English skills. Listen carefully and follow along with the subtitles. Before we begin, here are some key words you'll hear in the story. Pay attention to their meaning and try to use them in your own sentences later.
Bet, a decision to risk something, usually money, on the outcome of a situation. Consumer, a person who uses goods, services, or in this case, stories. Physician, a doctor, someone who is trained to heal and take care of people's health. Equal, the same in quantity, size, degree, or value, being on the same level or standard.
Now that you're familiar with these words, let's begin the story.
Once upon a time, there was a young man named Luke who lived in a small town surrounded by tall mountains. Ever since he was a child, Luke had always dreamed of climbing the highest peak in the region, Mount Valor. People in his town would bet on who would try to climb it next, but most bets were placed against anyone who tried. The mountain was known for being too dangerous, and no one had ever reached the top. Luke's father had been a physician in the town and often warned Luke about the risks of climbing. "You're a healthy young man," his father would say, "but even the strongest bodies are not equal to the force of nature. You must respect it." Still, Luke couldn't shake his dream. Every time he saw Mount Valor from his window, something inside him stirred. One day, Luke decided it was time. He packed his bag with food, water, and some tools for the climb. As he prepared to leave, a friend from the town, Henry, stopped by. Henry was a consumer of adventure stories, always reading about explorers and mountain climbers. He had never climbed a mountain himself, but he had plenty of advice to give. "Don't forget, Luke, you have to bet smart. Climbing is not just about strength, it's about knowing when to stop. Too many people think they're equal to the challenge and don't listen to their limits," Henry warned. Luke nodded but was determined. He knew this journey wasn't just physical. It was about testing his spirit, seeing if he could rise above fear and doubt. "I understand," Luke said, "but I need to try." The climb started smoothly. The weather was good, and Luke felt confident. But as he ascended, the air grew thinner, and the temperature dropped. His breath became heavy, and his body felt the strain. He rested, recalling his father's words about health and balance, but the peak still called to him. At one particularly steep point, Luke slipped, almost losing his footing. He quickly grabbed onto a rock, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment when most people would turn back. He knew the smart bet was to return to safety, but something inside him whispered to keep going. As Luke climbed higher, he encountered other challenges: loose rocks, sudden winds, and the cold biting at his skin. Each step was a battle. Yet with every obstacle, Luke reminded himself of why he started. It wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about proving to himself that he was capable, that he was equal to the dreams he carried. Hours passed, and Luke found himself near the top. His body ached and his energy was nearly gone. But the summit was so close. Just a few more steps, he thought. When he finally reached the peak, Luke stood in silence, gazing at the vast world below him. The feeling was overwhelming. The view was breathtaking, but it was the sense of achievement that filled him most. Sitting on the mountaintop, Luke thought about his journey. He hadn't bet on conquering the mountain to win praise or glory. He did it to challenge himself, to discover what he was capable of. In that moment, he felt an inner peace that no one could take from him. He was not just a consumer of other people's stories anymore. He had lived his own adventure, and he had won. When Luke returned to the town, people were amazed. Some had bet that he wouldn't make it, but they were wrong. His father, though proud, reminded him that not everyone is equal to every challenge and that wisdom comes from knowing your limits. Luke smiled and replied, "Sometimes the greatest bet is on yourself."
Great job following along with the story. Now, let's review the key words we learned today.
Bet, a decision to risk something, usually money, on the outcome of a situation. Example from the story: people in his town would bet on who would try to climb it next, but most bets were placed against anyone who tried. Consumer, a person who uses goods, services, or in this case, stories. Example from the story. Henry was a consumer of adventure stories, always reading about explorers and mountain climbers. Physician, a doctor, someone who is trained to heal and take care of people's health. Example from the story. Luke's father had been a physician in the town and often warned Luke about the risks of climbing. Equal, the same in quantity, size, degree, or value, being on the same level or standard. Example from the story. Even the strongest bodies are not equal to the force of nature. You must respect it.
Now, let's check your understanding of the story. See if you can answer these questions.
Question 1. Can you think of another word to describe Luke's feelings when he slipped and almost fell during the climb? Question 2. How did Luke's father's advice affect his approach to the climb?
Feel free to pause the video and write down your answers in the comments. Great work today. Well done. You've just completed another story with English Storytime Adventures. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more fun and educational stories. And don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts or answers to the questions. I'd love to see how much you've learned. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next episode of English Storytime Adventures. Until then, happy learning.